Welcome to the ACC Panic Room alongside Lauren Brownlow. I'm Joe Ovies. One very important question, Brownlow. Is Duke back?
I'm there. I'm there. I really am. Like, I was okay. It's not that I've been completely hesitant, right? Because we here in the Triangle can't be all that picky about like blowout wins,
That's
especially
true.
seeing as like we haven't had a lot of them. But
That's the point.
if you told me a month ago that I would have covered like what are we at now? Like if you count all the Triangle, I mean Duke's had four in a row.
Yeah.
Carolina's now had two. State had
Mm-hmm.
one even. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you had told me a month ago this is where we'd be, that I would have covered like however many blowout wins in a row for Triangle teams, I would have been like, I don't know, I'm not seeing it. So like
Well, I would have asked you, are you sure it's not December?
right. I mean, but in December, I don't know that a lot of us felt that was going to happen either for any of them necessarily. But yeah, or did they schedule a game against like whoever? I'm not going to just pick on a random team. But yeah, I mean,
Sure.
I don't think that we thought that that would happen in ACC play to any of these teams really. And so with Duke too, like just the way they were looking, it just didn't really seem like they could. I mean, they lost at Miami. Like I'm not trying to harp on that, but they did. I saw it. I saw it. They lost at
Yeah.
Miami. Like, and now they're here blowing everybody out. So I'm kind of willing to go there. I really am.
So here's the thing about Duke going forward. We alluded to this on Saturday night after they beat Virginia. The Virginia win essentially put Duke in a position where, all right, that was a must win in the sense that if Duke was going to make any run at the NCAA tournament as an at-large bid, they had to win that game. That set the table for the rest of their slate, including tonight's game against Syracuse, which is a good win. That also sets up possible good wins with Louisville, even though they just got blown out by North Carolina. They're coming off a COVID pause. If the measurables, whether you look at Ken Palm, you look at the net, that'll be a good win if they can do it. Mm-hmm. And then you got Georgia Tech, which is feisty. They're kind of flirting with an NCAA tournament bid if you look at the metrics. And then obviously North Carolina to close things out. They could lose one of these games. Like if they lose to Louisville, that might not be like the worst thing. But they would definitely have to win a couple games in the ACC tournament. The point is, we went from Duke being on the outside looking in for the NCAA tournament to putting themselves right on the bubble with what they have remaining. I know Gilio pointed this out a while back. You put it out on the show today, where you had to go back to like 1984 for Mike Krzyzewski to be in a position where you have to win these games in order to get into the NCAA tournament. And I joked, that's NC State's life. You know, like life as an NC State fan has been, oh my goodness, we have to win these games. If I don't win this game, then they're not going to make the NCAA tournament, or like they find out they're the last team in or whatever it is. Duke hasn't been in this position since I was 5 years old. And the way they're playing right now would lead you to believe they can actually pull this off.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing is like we knew that their margin for error would be slim to none, but we also knew that if they were able to somehow win out, like that would be enough. Probably, or well, it would be close to enough. It would at least
close enough.
It would put them in position to where they didn't have to win the entire ACC tournament, right? And I think regardless of what the NCAA people say, like they pay attention to like the way that you're playing entering the tournament too, and combine that with the fact that Duke is a blue blood, in quotes, right? I think it's
look, Lauren, let's be real. If they can find a way to put Duke in the NCAA tournament,
sure,
they're going to do
and
this.
by the way, that's why I say that like it would take something bad for North Carolina too, because I
think North Carolina in the last 2 weeks, North Carolina's put itself positioned to be in. I think they're in now. So
I think they're pretty much in. Yeah, like they can't afford anything too silly, but they really don't have anything left on their schedule that would qualify. It would really all depend on the ACC tournament, and even that would regardless. I think Carolina's put itself in good position anyway, and Duke, if it's on the fringe, I think they're going to find a way in. Either that or they'll pull those NIT shenanigans where I guess they would call someone up, which I still don't even want to discuss because stop it.
No, the question is why Duke is playing the way Duke is playing right now. And obviously, this gets to the Jalen Johnson conversation, which Jim Boeheim, the head coach at Syracuse, kind of found himself in the middle of it based on what he said on his radio show last week. Now, it's important to note that what Jim Boeheim said on his radio show, he said, quote, that guy was hurting them, that guy being Jalen Johnson. From that point on, since he got called out, the highest profile instance was Jay Billis doing that on the Bald Men on Campus show Friday on ESPN. Jim Boeheim has since spent the last two times in front of the press saying, that's not what I said. I'm just saying Duke's a better team. They know their roles. he's right. And these are things that we've talked about. With Jalen Johnson out of the equation, just because you've got a talented guy doesn't mean he necessarily fits with what you're trying to do. There's only so many players in one ball, right? But with him out of the equation, we've seen Matthew Hurt emerge. We've seen Mark Williams tonight is another example where he emerged. So I do think that there is some merit to Duke being a better team with defined roles and development with Jalen Johnson off the court. But the way Jim Boeheim's been talking about it as of late, it's like he never said anything disparaging, or he never said anything that was necessarily like you could like raise an eyebrow to. It's exactly what he did last week when he said that guy was quote unquote hurting them. And he was still salty at Jay Billis after the game today, where he's like, I know more basketball than Jay Billis does. Like, all right, dude, come on now.
By the way, what the funniest part of all of this is that apparently the other day when he had been asked about it, he was like, I haven't seen them play.
Right. He's like, they've got 2 monster wins. And yes, admittedly, I haven't seen them play. Well, then how do you know they're better? So right. I don't know. It's just Jim got caught up in it and he's trying to find his way out.
Yeah. That's like doing the thing where like, you know, you get caught, like maybe you have a friend who's a beat writer for like another team and you're like, wow, what's really made them better? Maybe you really take what they give you and run with it. Yeah. And then you get called out for like, hey, that's not quite right. You know, maybe you chose wrong about which take to embrace. And then when you get called on it, you have to be like, oh, you know what? That's just something I heard. It's fine. But you're right. Jim is like overall correct. You know what I mean? Like he's not wrong about the fact that like this has let everybody settle into their roles and stuff like that. I thought about doing a tweet, but people can't handle this right now with like full sarcasm font where I'm like, if Jalen Johnson's Duke teammates loved him as much as they say they do, they wouldn't be blowing everyone out in his absence. Yeah. My column. You know, speaking
of sarcastic tweets, I did that. I had my attempt at a sarcastic tweet saying that this wasn't a monster win for Duke tonight, and I think people missed the joke, but that's fine. You win some, you lose some. But
I actually fully blame, by the way, Jim Boeheim for the fact that we're still talking about this. Like,
well, I mean,
much later.
But the thing is, the thing is, the Jalen Johnson conversation is not going to go anytime soon because it's part of Duke's story, right? And also because it's Duke. And it's a high-profile player, you're trying to find out what the real story is, when there might not be a story. I mean, initially, I will admit that it looked a little weird. I mean, I get that's a pandemic and weird things happen, but the way this all played out with 3 weeks to go, it didn't really make a lot of sense for Jalen Johnson's NBA prospects to just opt out with the season. But I guess when you take a step back, well, what's better for your prospects? Not playing? You know, like if you're just having limited minutes and you're wondering why this guy, it almost becomes a distraction for everybody involved. And it ends up being, as I've kind of come to see it over the last couple of days, and you think about it a bit more, you see how Duke talks about it, you see them playing, you kind of get to the conclusion that it was mutually beneficial for all parties involved. And that's it. And that's okay. Sometimes it works out that way.
If you want my hottest take about this possible, actually, this isn't really a hot take. I sincerely believe this.
Okay.
One lesson we should take from all of this, because I do think most people have sincerely accepted that this is the case with Jalen Johnson and Duke, is that if a guy who ends up being a lottery pick is not the smoothest fit on a particular team, maybe you shouldn't point at the coach and say that he doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there because I believe that there are some other coaches, maybe even in our area, that we've heard that about in recent years. When there were certain players on their roster who ended up being high NBA draft picks that maybe they couldn't quite find the proper niche for, and maybe they got raked over the coals all season because of that. I'm just kind of trying to remember. Oh, Nas Little. Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. Nasir Little and Roy Williams. Remember how Roy was such an idiot because he couldn't use Nasir Little?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we should be calling Kay an idiot. I don't think either of them are idiots, and that is my point. Sometimes it's okay to say, hey, they went after a dude who's a high pick, who's going to be a high pick in the NBA.
Of course. Why wouldn't they? That's what they do.
You know, big time recruit. Sometimes it's not the best fit and you can't make it work. Sometimes you make it work a little bit like Roy and Nasir Little were able to. I'm just kind of throwing that out there because it wasn't that long ago that was indeed the case, that people were just killing Roy Williams for the fact that, well, you know, I don't know, he just can't figure out a way to use Nasir Little. I don't really get it. But now all these coaches or whoever else are out here like, oh, well, I guess, you know, he was really hurting them, you know, and he's going to be a lottery pick. I think, by the way, that both coaches did the best they could to make those players fit on their respective roster. And I think both players will end up going to the NBA draft in the best situation they could, considering the way their season started out.
Sometimes it just doesn't work out. Just like sometimes your players say they don't want to play defense in the first half, which is apparently what happened at Syracuse today. That was an interesting exchange. We'll close on this. Apparently Jim Boeheim in the postgame talked about, he didn't say which player it was. I know Syracuse Twitter has one name in mind, but he wouldn't say who it was. He says, yeah, at halftime I'm sitting there talking to these guys, and one just admitted to me that, yeah, we didn't really play defense in the first half. And Jim Boeheim was understandably upset, basically saying at this point in the season why you're not doing that. But you can insert your zone jokes here. That's where you put them, not playing defense, but was
Jim upset, or did he just maybe he needed to check the tape to see that wasn't happening? Because I could have sent him a note.
I think as Syracuse fans who watch this Panic Room will tell you, that's just Jim. Sometimes, it's just his demeanor. So I can't tell if he's salty, if he's just being Jim Boeheim. I don't know. Either way. Man,
the zone has been, I'm trying to think of a diplomatic word to use here.
It's
trash all year. It has been.
It has been trash. It's been trash for longer than this year.
It's been edging towards trash.
Yeah,
but they seem to have leaned into it.
It reminds me a lot of 2020. Just a big dumpster fire at this point.
There are raccoons circling Syracuse's defense right now.
That's gonna wrap it up for this.
Not disrespect, dude. Just saying.
No, you got to make shots, right, Brownlow?
Yeah, and you know what? When Syracuse's lack of length and athleticism can't close out on your shooters, you have an easier time doing so.
Still got to make them, though. Not always easy.
Yes.
Sometimes, there's a lid on the basket. That's going to wrap it up for this edition of the ACC Panic Room. We'll see you all later in the week.